Welcome to Podlr, where we read collections of posts from our Tumblr. Enjoy the mess! A show for the witches, Agatha All Along. Oh my god, we really can't believe it. Agatha All Along, a show that actually honors IRL witchcraft while still maintaining its Hollywoodness and good faith that also is for the girls and gays? Still cannot believe Marvel actually followed through and didn't shy away from showing any intimacy between Agatha and Rio. Not to mention Billy also has a same-sex kiss. Though we'd love to see Agatha and Rio in the cottage raising Nikki, it also makes sense narratively what they did with Nikki. Like, yes, obviously, the witches have unrealistic, flashy powers, but they still do tarot and magic with intent. It was fucking awesome and obvious they did their research. In an interview, Catherine Hahn even said she talked to a real witch. There always needs to be something visual to be able to translate something into the medium. Film and TV is a visual medium, and thus you need spectacle. The MCU has done this, but with Mark and Steven from Moon Knight before, talking in reflections. Dissociative disorders don't usually work like that, but it works well for television, and it was clear they did their research in all other aspects. Honestly, the MCU has gotten better with representation and we couldn't be happier. Hawkeye and Echo showed physical disabilities, Moon Knight was about neurodivergence, and there are many more heroes who aren't white. Examples, Black Panther, Shang-Chi. And aren't all men, the Marvels. Probably many more we are forgetting at the moment. Hell, things are so good it'd be a bit too long to mention them all. And that isn't to say representation is what makes the show good. You can have a diverse cast and still a shit show. But Agatha All Along was actually good. What's the difference? It was structured like a TV show. All the Marvel shows so far have felt like split-up movies with an overarching plot. It works, sure, but it doesn't feel like TV. It can be a bit much to take in. But Agatha All Along uses its format to its advantage, having each trial be an episode is so simple and yet genius. It feels fresh in the new landscape of movie-budget limited series. Not to mention the show used its motif of The Witch's Road to create the whole story. Every twist and turn goes back to that song, and yet it still is surprising and exciting. It's a lesson on how even seemingly simple ideas can be the best. Not everything must be grand. The best episodes were 7 and 9. 7 was very creative with how time was out of order from Lilia's perspective. Lilia's death was also a perfect moment for her character and it was quite beautiful to watch. The creators also said all the characters, besides Agatha probably, will stay dead. That's a decision we can respect. The MCU can sometimes feel low stakes with all the resurrection. Episode 9 was also amazing. The way the story comes full circle, the heart of it being Nikki, brings many tears to the eyes. We just wish we saw a bit more of the Agatha Rio moments. Not everything needs to be shown on screen, of course, but a bit more would have been nice. Even just Rio watching from the distance as Agatha kills each coven. But still, top tier stuff. Honestly, sorry to Moon Knight, but I think this is our new favorite of the Marvel shows so far. We had fallen out of love with the MCU over the years, only tuning into the ones we really cared about. But this restored our hope in the series. Hopefully Agatha will come back like she does in the comics and then is with Rio for the rest of eternity because Lord knows Death needs it. She's a bratty bottom at heart. The League of Villains, Society, and Quirks. So we just finished binging all of MHA and read the remaining chapters of the manga, and damn, we did not expect the League of Villains to be some of our favorite characters to ever grace this earth. But it's kind of unfortunate the franchise they ended up in. Let's talk about that. First, let's start by talking about the LOV and what quirks represent in them. In MHA, it's quite common for quirks to be used as allegories for different kinds of marginalization. Heteromorphs like Spinner are a representation of racism. Toga's quirk is a representation of how she loves someone and how society deems that love wrong. Toga is shown to love both boys and girls. People beg her to just be normal. She is obviously queer. Dobby's body was not made to deal with his own quirk. This reads as being born disabled. He also has the common disabled experience of being told to forget his dreams and aspirations. Twice's double quirk and the trauma that came from it lead to him developing dissociative identity disorder. Some in the LOV were also marginalized / had a rough start without anything to do with their quirks. Magna is a trans woman. Mr. Compress comes from a family lineage of criminals. Shigaraki is a League of Legends player. No, but seriously, this poor kid was abused and manipulated his whole life. Speaking of which, a lot of the LOV were abused and or neglected as children. Most of the shit Shigaraki went through was due to All for One, but it's not like his bio dad was stellar either. We all know Endeavor gets the Worst Dad of the Year award for how he raised Toya, but Dobby also got the All for One manipulation to a degree as well. Toga's parents were neglectful and verbally abusive. All of this is to say that LOV members clearly had a rough life, but they found a family in each other. They all cared for each other in their own way. Twice and Toga were very close and would take care of each other. Dobby burns down Toga's childhood home. Spinner and Shigaraki bond over video games and were genuine friends. Compress takes care of everyone and saves them. Everyone is sad when Magna and Twice die. All of this leads to this beautiful line from Shigaraki. The villains need a hero of their own. He wanted to be their hero. He wanted to destroy the world not just for his own urges, but to make the world a better place for his friends, for the LOV. But did he succeed? Even a little bit? Well, the hero society that doomed them all is still going well and thriving. The most change to come out of their mission was definitely a bigger focus on quirk counseling. This is definitely important, but is not the only thing that needed to change, and it only changed because of one person. The one person who showed empathy for Toga. Ochako is the one to implement this change, but she's the only person. She cannot change the entire world on her own. This is where we just can't get past the clear biases in the writing of MHA. The villains are not treated fairly. For example, the heroes get off scot-free with practically everything. Bakugo dies? Just kidding. Oh, the condition for him coming back to life was now Edgeshot has to die? Nah, he's fine too. Deku had an entire arc about wanting to save Shigaraki when no one else agreed, only for him to kill him in the end. And after killing him, it's not like he implemented changes to help prevent whoever the next Shigaraki is going to be. The cycle will continue until changes are made. So as you can see, there is a clear favoritism in the writing, and that is something that tends to be an issue whenever you have a plot device such as quirks that represent marginalization, and you have villains who are trying to fight their oppressors. Let's look at a few examples. For animation fans, an example that leaves a bitter taste in our mouth is the Dragon Prince's dark magic. Dark magic is something that is seen as corrupt, but also explained to be a way for humans to have magic to fight their oppressors, as they were seen as less than since they had no magic. But dark magic is also used as an allegory for drugs and addiction, so it gets messy. For the superhero fans, let's look at the boys. Supes are a complete mess. You have them representing conservatives and cops in an all supes are bastards way, while also having them as a marginalized race in danger of being genocided. You can't have both. Both of these examples show messy allegories in fantasy where rising against your oppressors is painted as wrong, and the marginalized are also seen in a negative light due to some other component of their fantasy, drugs and cops, respectively. MHA falls into the same trap with its villains. They're fighting their oppressors. They are oppressed due to their quirks just being who they are, but those quirks also lead to violent, murderous urges, decay and transform most of all. It ends up creating a scenario where you teach the audience that it's bad to rise against your oppressors, and it's bad to want change. So what could they have done differently? Without completely redoing the quirk fantasy, the simplest answer would be to redo the system. They hinted many times in the series that it needed to change somehow, and just never did. Normal civilians even wanted it to change, not just the villains, but it just doesn't change. They needed to put more focus on the push, not just from the villains, but from the innocent civilians as well, to prove it's something that needed to change. But it never will. It's fiction, and the book is closed. But just because it's fictional doesn't mean it doesn't represent real-world events. The story teaches negative things about marginalization and how we should never make a stand. It's like telling all the women right now in America to not be angry their anatomy and rights are being taken away from them. It's telling those women to love the man who is doing this to them. It's telling queer people to just accept they can't get married or transition anymore. It's telling us there is nothing to be done. But remember, that isn't true. If you keep fighting, things could change. It unfortunately may not be in your lifetime, but at least we can try to make things better for the future generations so no one has to hurt like the LOV did, like real people do today. Arcane Season 2 felt more like a teaser than a season. Does this make sense to anyone else? Like, we remember watching the trailers and being like, ooh, can't wait to see what Vi's pit fighting era is like, and ooh, we can't wait to see how Jinx and Echo end up so close to each other to literally paint one another. And then, how did we feel after watching the end of the season? Ooh, can't wait to see how Vi's pit fighter era is like, and ooh, we can't wait to see how Jinx and Echo end up so close enough to literally paint each other. The Vi pit fighter era was the music video we'd already been shown, and almost all of Jinx and Echo's main universe scenes were cut, and those are just the tip of the iceberg. Our main complaint about Season 2 is that it just goes too fast, and almost all major issues about the season stem back to that. The show really needed 3 seasons. Why? Well, a main complaint we've seen about this season is how it completely does away with the class divide narrative between Piltover and Zaun, in favor of Victor's Magic Jesus Cult and Noxus. And we completely agree. This would have been fixed by having Season 2 wrap up the class divide storyline and Season 3 be about Noxus and Victor. This way the stakes amp up in a way more digestible to the viewers as well. Things start off with class divide, which then gets to be a war, then we amp up to the magic death of both cities on the line, instead of class divide to immediate unrelated death. Not to mention, more care can be put on the class divide instead of excusing Piltover as if nothing happened. Also, if we had more time for scenes, then maybe Kate Vi can have a better Sesbian Lex scene than going to town right after Vi's sister said, hey, I'm gonna go off myself. We know this show's expensive to make, so even just say 3 more episodes could have been better to slow the pace a little. Or hell, we don't know, maybe the damn hour and 10 minutes of cut content from the final episode. The show still needed to go slower, and that hour wouldn't save it, but damn, it sure help. With the way the season is rushed, nothing is actually resolved. The class issue persists. Sure, Savika's on the council now, but you, the viewer, don't actually get to know how that plays out. Vi and Caitlin's relationship just ends a toxic mess of oppressor x oppressed. She's one of the good ones, and Jinx, oh my god, Jinx. Why is it that the lesson is the oppressed must stop the cycle of violence? Why must the mentally ill girl abandon her family who loves her to make her family happy? Is that the lesson we are really teaching today? Jinx went from being one of our favorite, most accurate portrayals of mental illness to now being a plot device to tell people who relate to her to abandon everything. It's saying you're too much of a burden for your families. That's a fucking horrible thing to portray in a definitive light. See, we were fine with it at first while it was happening on screen because it made sense. People with BPD tend to feel evil or be too much for their loved ones. It's very common for them to break off relationships, but it should only ever be from Jinx's skewed perspective. The lesson should end up being that Jinx was wrong and that she isn't actually a Jinx. Jinx should learn that it's okay to love and be with her sister, that she won't kill her from just being there. Instead, the narrative teaches both Jinx and the audience that she was right all along, that she doesn't deserve that love. Things got even weirder with Echo. Looking at the stuff in the art book, it seems Jinx is absolutely obsessed in love with him. Real girl. She's basically saying, "That's my man," in all the art book graffiti. But we don't get to actually see any of this, which means we don't get to know what made her decide to leave him either. Is the lesson to also abandon everyone in our lives, not just family? If we got scenes of Echo and Jinx talking more, maybe, just maybe, it would have made more sense. Or maybe if they had more time, she just would have gotten a better ending. We'll never know. Either way, the series definitely needed more time to do everything it wanted to do. It completely sidelined its main character in Season 2, as well as the entire main plot, and then goes on to teach horrible lessons to the audience about oppression and victims within the system. Honestly, we still enjoyed Season 2. It was beautifully animated, and the scenes we did get between characters were amazing when they actually existed. Jace and Victor took a turn very different than their OG game counterparts, but it was welcomed. Gonna ignore all the weird comments from Link right now before we have a brain aneurysm. All in all, Arcane Season 2 was an amazing teaser for a show, but it did not deliver as a show itself. It really needed 3 seasons to show more care on its characters and the hardships they face within the divide of Piltover and Zaun, and it should never have been canon to main League of Legends. What we do in the shadows manage the impossible. Queerbait with queer characters. What a finale last night, huh? While parts of it were enjoyable and funny, it's also hard to miss how incredibly shallow the whole thing feels. Let us explain. First off, this show refuses to have a single emotional moment. People call it the shit and fart show for a reason. The earlier seasons left some room for emotional moments and development, but the later seasons completely shit on any nice moment they have with a joke. We get that the show's gimmick is that it's just like a sitcom. The vampires never change, and that really is an interesting concept. But in the finale, they completely ignore a theme their own show set up, that the vampires did in fact change this time, just a little bit. And why did they change? Guillermo. Over 6 seasons, we get to see how the vampires grow emotionally or explore new endeavors, all because of Guillermo. But the finale completely writes that part away and decides that the vampires never changed, completely undoing 6 seasons of development. Now let's get to the thing that ticked us off the most. A show shouldn't be judged purely on whether its popular ship got together or not, but for this show, that is a major, valid criticism. It's not like the internet was being the internet and made up a random ship that made no sense. This ship had been hinted for years. Despite its characters, both Nandor and Guillermo, being canonically queer, their relationship follows that of classic queerbait beats. There's just enough hints and breadcrumbs to keep the queer audience interested without ever having to even deliver on the queer aspects of the characters. This goes beyond Nandor and Guillermo as well. Ever seen Nadja or Laszlo have serious relationships with characters of the same sex? No. Anything remotely gay is played for laughs and not real representation. Some moments in the show showed characters' queerness. Guillermo's episode about coming out is great, but the show refuses to deliver on any of the queer plot lines it set up. Honestly, refuses to even wrap up any plot lines. Now, let's talk about those alternate endings. Honestly, in our opinion, the Nadja hypnosis with 3 alternate scenes in the reruns was genius. Very creative, but dear God did they fumble the bag. If they spent the rest of the season tying up loose threads, then this would have been a fine concept. But what ends up happening is it's a non-canon time waster in a finale that has too much to wrap up. It is quite literally a waste of time. They need to spend this time wrapping up arcs instead. There's also the case of the Nandormo scene. During the final alternate scene of the night, we get to see human Nandor Guillermo, one of the audience's perfect endings. This is such a goddamn slap in the face to anyone who cared about these characters. It is quite literally making fun of the audience. Very Sherlock of you, what we do in the shadows. It's once again for the final time playing Nandormo and queerness in general for laughs. They're baiting the ship right in front of your face and telling you they think your idea is dumb, that it's a ridiculous joke, ignoring the fact that they are the ones who set it up. Then we also have the weird homophobic rhetoric from the cast and crew. In many interviews, there have been statements where people say something like, "It's important this day and age to show that men can still be friends and not everything has to be sexual." Now, one question, who the fuck said otherwise? Don't know if you've noticed, but queer people are a minority. Most men who know each other are friends. There's gay men, sure, but they are a minority, and this extends to fiction as well. Sure, the internet will ship everyone, but an internet ship does not dictate canon. There's not a lot of queer representation out there compared to all the cis-het characters out there. Frankly, we have no idea where this rhetoric of men needing to prove they can just be friends came from. The exact same rhetoric is being used for Jason, Victor, and Arcane as well. It just screams toxic masculinity not being able to handle being in queer spaces. Fandom spaces, especially what we do in the shadows and Arcane, tend to be quite queer-leaning. Queer people want representation. That's why queerbait hurts so bad. You think you're finally seen only to be lied to and used for profit. It's so incredibly disrespectful to the fans. What We Do in the Shadows really fumbled its last season and frankly has been going downhill for years. A great lesson on predatory shipbaiting so bad it made its canonically queer characters into queer bait. That's genuinely fucking impressive in the worst way possible. Not to mention that random ass manga guide thing. What the fuck? Not even including the queer stuff, the show just failed to wrap up any of its plot lines or give any emotional satisfaction to the viewer. Anyway, this finale really pissed us off. Bye! A textual analysis of gothic horror or the novel Lyric Hunt by Chani Jash. Hello, so we had to write a textual analysis of a song, so we did an entire album like insane people for our English class, so we figured we'd post it here because it was a lot of fun to write. Enjoy. The Gothic Horror album by Chani Jash plays on the idea that there are people othered by society just for being themselves. These groups mainly consist of queer and disabled people. Society others these people, treats them as monsters or madmen. This album chooses to highlight the monsters and tells its audience to embrace and celebrate those differences. Jash achieves this by using Gothic horror as an inspiration and medium, mainly stories from the Victorian era. Every story chosen is one that features disabled characters and/or characters with queer coding. These songs focus on these supposed monsters. The song titled Intro introduces the audience to the album. There is a mystery unnamed narrator who introduces the audience to the protagonists of the first two songs, those being Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The intro takes the audience right into the Ballad of Dr. Jekyll. This song explores the character of Henry Jekyll from The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson, 1886. We see Jekyll's internal moral battle about letting his alter ego Edward Hyde out. The song keeps intact the reading of the original book that the potion Jekyll drinks is a metaphor for addiction. It also keeps that the Mr. Hyde personality isn't so much a completely different person than Dr. Jekyll, but is the way Jekyll wishes he could be. This is referenced in the line, "Is it worth the shift in consonants just to live how I'd like?" Jash, 2023, verse 1. The song ends with Jekyll deciding to take his own life to rid the world of Hyde, this being how the original book also ends. The next song is from Edward Hyde's side of the story, titled The Mr. Hyde Jive. Hyde focuses more on desire. He initially taunts Jekyll, pretending to be the scary monster Jekyll sees him as. He quickly drops that facade to more so talk about fulfilling his and Jekyll's own desires. The song plays with the queer coding of Jekyll and Hyde. It is hinted at the book that some of the heinous deeds Hyde commits is that of sleeping with men. Hyde goes on to say he is just the other side of Jekyll. Jash, 2023, chorus, writes, "For every Henry in this world, there's an Edward stuck behind." This line refers to the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde being about human duality. We all have a side of us we may not be proud of, as we are ashamed for it. Hyde tells us to embrace that desire every now and again, but to not go too far. We move on to the Wilhelmina Waltz. This song covers Dracula by Bram Stoker, 1897. The song is from the perspective of Dracula trying to court Wilhelmina, or just Mina. The song makes many references to Mina's current marriage to Jonathan Harker. In the book, Jonathan escapes Dracula's castle, and as punishment, Dracula tries to court his wife, Mina. The Wilhelmina Waltz is about Dracula's feelings for Mina as she undergoes her vampire transformation. Near the end of the song, the character Renfield warns Mina to not let Dracula too close as, "He'll abuse you, he'll misuse you, he'll raise hell on earth to subdue you, till not even death can undo you." Jash, 2023, verse 4. The common reading of Renfield and Dracula's relationship is that of a toxic romance. Renfield means well in his warning to Mina, but dies for it. Keeping in theme with vampires, we transition over to Assyrian Rhapsody. Based on the novella Carmilla by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu, 1872. The song explores how in the original novella, vampirism was used as a metaphor for lesbianism between the characters Carmilla and Laura, and how immoral it was. Jash, 2023, states, "Fables label She the Vampire," to explain how, in his opinion, Carmilla was never really a vampire, just a lesbian. She was labeled a vampire to warn others of the so-called dangers and sin of homosexuality. The song ends with saying Carmilla will not wilt from the hate of others and will rise on higher. We enter The Monster's Lament, based on Frankenstein or The Modern Prometheus by Mary Shelley, 1818. The song starts out with simple wording that evolves over time, showcasing how the monster originally had to teach himself English throughout the story. The monster talks about his self-hatred and feelings on his creator, Victor Frankenstein, abandoning him for his looks. The monster expresses his plans to kill his creator and make him suffer just as he had. This shows one of the readings of the original book, that Victor was the monster's father who abandoned and abused him. By torturing Victor, the monster continues that cycle of abuse. Next is the mouthful title, An Elegy for One Roderick Usher, or The Haunted Palace. This song is about the fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, 1839. The narrator of the album is revealed to be the protagonist of the fall of the House of Usher. He remains nameless just unlike the original story. The song is a mix of a retelling of the fall of the House of Usher, but also uses The Haunted Palace by Edgar Allan Poe, 1839, directly as the verses sung by Roderick Usher. The narrator is there to comfort his friend Roderick as his sister is ill and dies. She has a condition that makes her corpse appear alive and well. Such I've heard is the irony of the cataleptic's rue. Jash, 2023, verse 8. The house reflects the mental state of Roderick Usher. A popular reading is that Roderick has schizophrenia. That is why his imagination and what happens in the house reflects his paranoia. The narrator tries to read his friend a story, but all of the sound effects from the story echo into the real life. As Roderick's sister appears alive, she comes back to life and kills her brother. Once they are both dead, the narrator escapes and the house crumbles. The narrator closes out by reciting the rest of the haunted palace as Roderick is dead. The interlude states that was it for the main event being Gothic horror. Instead, we now transition into books of different genres, first being a song titled Dead Man's Sea Shanty, which is about Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, 1883. The song follows young Jim Hawkins in his recount of the events of the novel. In the story, Jim Hawkins acquires a crew to hunt for treasure, but Long John Silver is secretly planning a mutiny. Hawkins recounts his attempts to steal back the ship solo and how that fails. He is captured by Long John's crew. Luckily, he met a stranded sailor, Ben Gunn, who saves him and locates the treasure. Hawkins also puts his differences aside with Long John when his crew plans to mutiny him as well. On their way back to Britain, they sing the song present throughout the chorus, but that also originates from Treasure Island. 15 Men on the Dead Man's Chest. Stevenson, 1883, Chapter 34. Jash also adds his own interpretation at the end. The outro is taken directly from the preamble of Treasure Island. It starts with Hawkins reading it, who then fades out into the narrator, here to introduce our final story. The penultimate song is Ode to the Cog, based on 1984 by George Orwell, 1949. The song follows Winston Smith as he falls in love with Julia. 1984 takes place in a totalitarian society where there is such a thing as thought crime. You must believe what the party wants you to believe, marry who they say you marry. That is what makes Winston's love of Julia dangerous. The party in question is Big Brother. They catch both Winston and Julia and torture them both. Their methods of that are a more intense version of the brainwashing they use on the general public, being titled doublespeak. Jash, 2023, Bridge, shows this by using samples proclaiming the following lines. War is peace, the law of gravity is nonsense, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, and most famously, 2 plus 2 is 5. The idea of 2 plus 2 being 5 is the specific phrase Winston is tortured into believing. The book and song end up taking a major diversion from each other. In the book, Winston is tortured into loving Big Brother. In the song, Winston is shot and killed by Big Brother, but before he dies, he has his last moment of rebellion. Winston has an uplifting monologue proclaiming humanity will eventually rise up and that history cannot be rewritten. His final sung words are 2 plus 2 is 4. Jash, 2023, verse 8. A sample of Julia from the 1984 movie adaptation, Michael Radford, 1984, saying, I'm corrupt to the core, seamlessly transitions into a crowd screaming, encore. The narrator decides to indulge the audience with an encore to wrap up the album. The song is a cover of The Monster Mash by Bobby Boris Pickett, 1962. The song features the narrator showing the audience around a gothic party with all the protagonists of the songs and their plus ones. The song features many references to the original books while also celebrating the differences of the characters that were perhaps not celebrated at the times these books were published. Frankenstein's monster names himself Adam. Mina dances with Carmilla, alluding to both of them having close relations to another woman in their own stories. Carmilla with Laura and Mina with her friend Lucy. Hawkins also allows himself to have fun with this odd group, and Winston celebrates being free. The narrator raises a toast with each main character toasting to what is important to them. Jash, 2023, verse 6, does a voice for each character while also playing their respective motifs. To Mighty Adventure, Jim Hawkins. To Love, Dracula. To Lust, Carmilla. To Fury, Adam. To the Proles, Winston Smith. To Vice, Edward Hyde. The narrator finishes with, Let us damn the fools that refuse to have fun. Let us sing as all and let us dance as one. Josh is telling the audience here that it is okay to feel and embrace those things. He even ends with the original line from the Monster Mash telling the audience the mash was meant for them too. Jash tells a compelling story while perfectly incorporating rhetorical devices such as pathos, logos, and ethos. Jash uses the othering of the monsters to invoke sympathy and feelings towards them, thus creating pathos. By using such old established literature from the Victorian era, Jash uses this to his advantage to establish logos. The ethos is present in each voice Jash does. With his incredible voice work and immersive music, it feels as if the characters are really talking to the audience, or rather, singing. All of this combined has the audience hooked and not only accepting of the monsters, but maybe of themselves and others as well. This tag is too accurate to not put into the Podlr. Hashtag will forever be mad there isn't a Dorian Gray song. Forget Edward Hyde. He is literally the gothic whore. Forgive the mic quality, I'm lazy. Anyway, thank you for listening to today's Podlr. Expect another one whenever the hell we make it.